American Top 40.
This is Casey on American Top 40, and let me finish answering that letter now from Evelyn Gorgas in Morovas, Puerto Rico. She listens to AT40 on WBMJ in San Juan, and she asked if a song had ever moved up, then down, then up again in the chart. Well, a lot of songs have done it a lot of times. And the one that did it the most, that is, had more up and down peaks during the time it was on the chart, was by a superstar ballad singer of the rock era. It was the first hit he ever had in 1957. And it had 9 up and down peaks. The artist, Johnny Mathis. The song, Wonderful, Wonderful. And the countdown continues.
American Top 40.
This is Casey Kasem on our special countdown of American Top 40, and I have now the artist whose album stayed on the LP charts for 427 consecutive weeks. That's right, longer than anybody else in the history of the charts. Now that means it appeared on the album sales charts every single week for 8 years. The man who did that is a ballad singer who ranks 32nd among the top artists of the rock and roll era. On that record-setting album of his are songs such as Wonderful, Wonderful, Chances Are, Misty, It's Not For Me To Say, and this one. Here's Johnny Mathis.
You ask.
The 32nd top artist of the rock and roll era, Johnny Mathis singing 12th of Never.
American Top 40.
Now, let's answer that question about longevity on the album chart. It comes from Rip Van Riper, a DJ on radio station KVLV in Fallon, Nevada. And Rip says he recently noticed that the album Dark Side of the Moon by Pink Floyd has been on the Billboard LP chart for 414 weeks. That's 8 years. And Rip was wondering whether any album has been on the LP chart even longer. Well, there is an album that rode the charts longer, Rip. It's a greatest hits album by a balladeer who was also an outstanding athlete in college. He'd been a track and field star at San Francisco State, and he'd even been invited to try out for the 1956 Olympic team. But he passed up his shot at a gold medal because at the same time he'd been offered a recording contract by Columbia Records. His first hit was a song called Wonderful, Wonderful, and he followed that debut with great standards like It's Not For Me To Say, Chances Are, and Misty. I'm talking about Johnny Mathis. Johnny's greatest hits album was released in 1958 and spent 490 non-consecutive weeks on the LP chart, the record for the most weeks any album has spent on the album chart. And there's your answer, Rip. The album that spent the most weeks on the LP chart? Greatest Hits by Johnny Mathis. 490 weeks, nearly 9.5 years.
The hits from coast to coast.
Well, now we're up to that hit duet that features a singing star who once took a giant leap over a grand piano just to answer a question. It happened some years ago at a teenage dance here in the Los Angeles area. This recording artist was making a personal appearance. He stepped up on stage, picked up a microphone, and started answering questions from the audience. One of the kids asked him if the story in a fan magazine was really true. Had this singer been a college track star, and had he actually qualified for an Olympic tryout in the high jump? Well, the singer thought for a moment, and then without saying a word, he put down the microphone, ran across the stage, and took an Olympic-style leap, sailing right over the grand piano. A show-and-tell answer by former track star and singing star Johnny Mathis. This week, Johnny's in the countdown singing a hit duet with Dionne Warwick. Up a couple of notches this week to number 38, here's Friends in Love, Dionne Warwick and Johnny Mathis.
Friends in Love.
Moving from number 40 to number 38, second week on the chart. Dionne Warwick and Johnny Mathis on American Top 40 with Friends in Love.
American Top 40. Top 40.
We're getting closer and closer to number 1. Now we're up to the big hit song, Owner of a Lonely Heart, by the English band Yes. It hit number 1 3 weeks ago, 12 years after Yes first charted in late 1971. Now, 12 years between your first hit and your first number 1 may seem like a long wait. But a lot of artists have waited more than 12 years. Big stars like Kenny Rogers, Glenn Campbell, Louis Armstrong, and Sammy Davis Jr. And the man who holds the record waited more than 21 years between his first chart appearance and his first number 1 single. This singer from San Francisco first charted in February of 1957 with a song called Wonderful, Wonderful. After that, he came close to the top a couple of times with songs like It's Not For Me to Say and Chances Are. But it wasn't until June of 1978 when he finally hit number one. It was on a duet with Deniece Williams, a song called Too Much, Too Little, Too Late. And that put Johnny Mathis at the number one spot 21 years after he first charted. The longest span in history for any act between first chart single and first number one. Balladeer Johnny Mathis.
Casey's Coast to Coast.